Your daughter was rushed to the hospital in an emergency. Both mother and child are in a critical condition. I received this unexpected call from the OBGYN where my pregnant daughter was receiving her checkups. Apparently, my daughter had collapsed, buried in snow right outside our house, and was discovered by a neighbor who promptly called an ambulance. I couldn't wrap my head around this sudden turn of events, but immediately drove off to the hospital. Please let them be safe, God. Please protect my daughter and her unborn child. 2 hours later, I arrived at the hospital, only to be met with a harsh reality. My name is Grace. I'm 55 years old. My husband passed away in an accident 3 years ago. My daughter Kaylee, who was already married at the time, was worried about me, but I didn't want to intrude on her new family, so I declined their offer to live together and chose to live a couple of hours away by car. Kaylee, 27, is incredibly patient and not one to complain about trivial matters. Whenever I would call to check in, Kaylee always responded with a bright voice. Everything's fine. I'm enjoying life. Her husband, Blake, is a brash person who never even acted respectful to me, his mother-in-law, since the day we first met. His self-centered tendencies always put his opinions before Kaylee's, even during their wedding preparations, which often left me wondering if Kaylee was truly happy. However, I never anticipated this dire situation. Why was my pregnant daughter out in the snow? Please let her be safe. Upon arriving at the hospital, the person who called the ambulance was accompanying me. As I was hearing the details from them, the doctor in charge came to me. Your daughter is currently unconscious and in a very critical condition. Apparently, she was conscious when she was brought to the hospital, but she insisted that her husband should not be contacted, and gave them my phone number. In the hospital room, I held Kaylee's hand and kept calling her name. But sadly, she never opened her eyes again, and quietly passed away after a while. I can't believe that my dear Kaylee is no longer in this world. My body felt heavy, like lead, in this abyss of despair, and I couldn't stand up. After some time in shock, I had to call Blake, Kaylee's husband, from my cell phone. When he answered, it was clear from his slurred speech that he was heavily drunk. As soon as I said, "Hello?" he mistook me for Kaylee and started talking unilaterally. "Hey, Kaylee! Is all the snow at the entrance cleared? Once you're done, come pick me up in the car." Kaylee has passed away. Huh? What are you talking about? Who the hell are you? I struggled to hold back my tears and told him I was Kaylee's mother. For a moment, he seemed to hesitate, but he refused to believe that Kaylee had passed away, convinced that I was lying. You had Kaylee shoveling snow and took the house key to go out drinking, which led to this cruel outcome. Shoveling snow? How do you know about that? Ah, right. Kaylee must have told you. No, I heard it from the neighbor. Apparently, the neighbor found Kaylee fainting in the snow when they returned from shopping. When they asked what happened, Kaylee said something shocking. She had been locked out of the house by Blake before he went out drinking, so she couldn't receive her cell phone inside the house and lost consciousness in the freezing cold. The house key? Ah, right. I kept it because if it fell in the snow, it wouldn't be found. Don't lie! It seems you told my heavily pregnant daughter to stay outside until she finished shoveling snow. Stop nagging, old woman. Don't interfere in our marital matters. Also, stop making bad jokes about death. Kaylee couldn't just simply be gone. No matter how many times I explained to Blake that my daughter is no longer with us, he would not understand. Call a taxi and come home, immediately. I'm heading to your house too. Let's talk, face to face. No way! You and Kaylee are planning to blame everything on me, aren't you? Ugh, I feel sick. I'm too dizzy from the alcohol. I'll stay at a hotel nearby tonight. With that, he hung up the phone, unilaterally. My heartfelt words didn't reach his ears at all. I didn't think he could be this unreasonable, but I don't feel like calling him back either. Pondering on what to do next, I, who had lost the strength to drive 2 hours back to my own house, decided to spend the night at Kaylee's. I took a taxi, and when I arrived at Kaylee's house, I found vegetables like green onions and radishes left cut in the kitchen. She must have been preparing dinner. Just a few hours ago she was here, and now I can't even talk to her. This is too painful. Kaylee? As I wiped my tears and cleaned up the kitchen, I found Kaylee's diary in the kitchen cupboard. I remembered the conversations with the neighbor and the doctor. This might tell me about Kaylee's life. I was desperate to know why my daughter, who should have been eagerly waiting for the birth of her baby any day now, had to sleep forever. Believing that I would find the whole truth, I began reading the diary. The reality documented in it far exceeded my imagination. Kaylee had resigned from her job because her health deteriorated after pregnancy, and she couldn't go to work. Since then, Blake had berated her as a useless wife and a parasite eating into his money. She was forced to cook meals and make lunchboxes every day, despite suffering from morning sickness. Not only that, Blake would call her while at work to demand chores, hardly giving her any time to rest. If only I'd realized sooner what she was enduring, maybe Kaylee would still be here, healthy and happy. The diary revealed that even under these harsh circumstances, Kaylee never sought divorce because of a threatening remark Blake had made. "Don't you dare think about leaving me and becoming free. If we were to get divorced, I, the breadwinner, would take custody of the baby. You wouldn't get to see the child at all. So remember that." He took advantage of Kaylee's fear that she might not be able to raise a child alone, effectively shackling her with invisible bonds. Having finished reading the diary and imagining my daughter's pain, my heart trembled with sorrow, and I couldn't stop crying. I want to take revenge on Blake somehow. I won't be at peace until I've avenged Kaylee, but the diary alone isn't enough evidence to prove that he was responsible for her death. Despite my search, I found no definitive proof that Blake had cast my pregnant daughter out into the snow. As evening fell the next day, Kaylee's phone, which had been left at home, received a call from Blake. "Hey, Kaylee! Stop pretending to be dead! It won't work on me. Make my favorite dish tonight and wait for me at the entrance on your knees." How many times do I have to tell you that my daughter is gone? If that's true, then show me the proof. Fine, I replied, quickly hung up and immediately sent him a photo of Kaylee's death certificate. I figured that even someone like Blake would grieve upon learning that Kaylee had left this world because of him. As expected, he quickly called back. "Do you understand now?" "So, it's true then. Well, there's nothing to be done about the dead. I'll get the life insurance payout, and I can forget about the annoying past and start over. So, what about the funeral? Ah, what a hassle." Faced with Blake's nonchalant delivery of these incredibly cruel words, my hand began to shake with anger. I can't let a man like that be the chief mourner. I will send my daughter myself off to the other world. Swallowing my anger, I made a proposal to Blake. "I'll arrange the funeral, and I'll act as the chief mourner. You attend as the husband. You pay all the funeral costs, but I get all the condolence money." "Understood." "All right. I'll have to make sure my relatives come. Try to invite as many of your relatives as possible so that I can get a hefty sum." With a cheerful voice, Blake said, "I'll be living in a hotel for a while," and abruptly hung up the phone. He must be a very greedy man. Despite knowing the tragic end Kaylee met, he remains unperturbed, showing no remorse towards his deceased wife and unborn child. My heart, which was devastated by the loss of Kaylee, changed to a desire for revenge against Blake, and a raging fire of revenge began to burn. I can't let Kaylee's pain go unanswered. I'll show Blake the hell of this world. I stayed at Kaylee's house until the funeral, preparing everything. Then, on the day of Kaylee's funeral, Blake approached me, hands in his pockets and a sleazy smirk on his face. "I'll play the part of a grieving husband who couldn't be the chief mourner. You do your part well. Once the funeral's over, I'll take the condolence money and leave immediately." His words infuriated me, but I prioritized sending my precious daughter off. Both families gathered, crying and saying, "She was so young to leave us. It's heartbreaking. I can't believe Kaylee is gone." After a few words of grief, I then stood in front of the microphone to make a speech as the chief mourner. "Thank you all for gathering here today to remember my daughter Kaylee. The truth is," I started to explain to the entire family how our late-term pregnant daughter had left us. The solemn air shifted to murmurs of shock, and at this, Blake abruptly stood. "Don't be fooled by this old woman's lies. Kaylee insisted on shoveling the snow herself, ignoring my objections. That's why this happened." Ugh! I was at a loss for words as he began to feign tears. I had predicted Blake would react this way, and so I opened my daughter's diary that I had brought with me. This is an entry from the day before Kaylee passed away. Blake told me to clean every nook and cranny of the house, but my belly was aching, so I couldn't do it today. He got angry and threw away all the dinner when I was about to eat. I'm worried if the baby didn't get enough nutrition. That's an exaggeration. I merely slipped and knocked the food off the table. She's making me out to be the villain. She's too delusional. He interrupted, but I ignored him and continued reading. If we divorce, I, who am unemployed, won't be able to raise the child by myself. Blake told me, if you don't want to lose custody, you'll be my slave for life. Don't read things that aren't written there. You're causing everyone to misunderstand me. Despite his loud protests, his face was steadily paling. His expression seemed to indicate the truth. He started to come towards me as if he couldn't hold back anymore, but some of our relatives stopped him. "You think you can get away with this? I'll call the police and put you in jail for defamation." "Are you not the one who should be arrested by the police?" "Don't get ahead of yourself. Watch your mouth." His true nature couldn't be hidden, no matter how much he tried. Blake's face, glaring sharply at me, was pure villainy to anyone who looked. The attendees sighed and murmured, "What a terrible man. The worst kind of man." "Oh, well, I may have overreacted a bit. Kaylee just wrote about our insignificant spousal quarrels in her diary, in an exaggerated way. Please believe me." It seemed he still thought he could talk his way out of this, unaware of the gravity of his actions. I informed him that neglecting a pregnant woman and her unborn child and leaving them out in the cold would result in severe punishment. "You have no proof. If you have it, show it." He looked down on me, snorting with a laugh, seemingly thinking I was just bluffing. "We do have evidence." Before coming to the funeral home, I had checked the dashcam footage from our neighbor's car, which had captured everything. Ah? It's amazing that it's always recording, even when the engine is off. Well, I'm about to call the police. As I showed him the SD card from the dashcam, Blake clicked his tongue. Damn! I had already contacted not only the neighbors, but also the doctor who had treated Kaylee, asking them to testify. I was wrong. It was my fault. So let's settle this amicably. I'll give you half of the life insurance and the condolence money. So please forgive me. Stop joking around. I lost my daughter, who was more precious to me than my own life. You think you can solve this with money? I hope you experience the despair Kaylee felt in the cold and harsh outdoors. As I immediately called the police and explained the whole situation, they agreed to rush to the funeral home. Meanwhile, the relatives who attended the funeral kept an eye on Blake to prevent him from escaping. You'll be picked up soon. You should atone to Kaylee before then. Kaylee, I'm sorry. Please save me from the other world. After calling out to Kaylee with an insincere voice, Blake then turned to me and began to grovel pathetically. Mother-in-law, I'll apologize as many times as it takes. So please call the police back and tell them it was a mistake. Please? I shook my head strongly, looking at my daughter lying in the coffin. Kaylee was looking forward to meeting her baby. I'll avenge your grievances. As I coldly looked down on Blake, who was approaching, he sensed something and his face turned ashen, starting to tremble. No! Help me! Blake began to panic, shedding tears and trying to escape. But Blake was held in a tight grasp by his father and relatives, rendering him immobile. He was soon taken away by the arriving police, disappearing in the back of a patrol car. His parents and relatives later bowed deeply to me and my daughter, offering apologies repeatedly. When I glanced at my daughter's face, which now rested in the coffin, it seemed to bear a slight smile. Finally, the weight on her chest has been lifted. Kaylee, now you can embark on your journey to the other world without any worries. The dashcam footage and testimonies served as the smoking gun, and Blake was put behind bars. He would spend some time in the cold, high-walled prison, surrounded by intimidating individuals. Becoming a criminal, he was also fired from his job. Since his parents and relatives have declared their intention to cut ties with him, his future life will undoubtedly be harsh. By the way, I didn't tell Blake, as he never asked, but Kaylee's baby was born safe and sound, and I have decided to raise it. Kaylee had named me as the beneficiary of her life insurance, so when the child grows up, I plan to pass everything on. I'm thankful that at least the grandchild is safe. From now on, I will pour double the love into this child, mine